There's no turning back. Attention-seeking slacktivism made Harry regret. Greetings and a gracious welcome to the World of Royal Staff's channel. As I sit here and ponder over the so-called Prince, Harry, I can't help but feel infuriated. He's a fraud, a bigger fraud than his wife, Meghan, I must say. He claims to be helping servicemen and women with his book, but in reality it's creating a security risk for them. And let's not forget about how he wants to help people deal with their trauma and grief, yet all he does is address his own issues and condones the use of illegal drugs. How can he claim to help those struggling with their mental health when all he's providing is unqualified psychobabble and terrible advice like if you don't like your job, just quit? What's even more infuriating is how he thinks he's above the man on the street. He flies around in private jets while preaching to others to fly less. He writes a book full of intimate details about others but doesn't want the press to intrude into his life. I haven't watched all of his interviews or read his entire book. But can someone tell me, did he ever mention how to get help or who to call when someone is struggling? Or was the focus always on him and his own experiences? With 6 hours of docuseries, 4 hours of interviews, 400 pages of a book, and 12 podcast episodes, you'd think he could manage to offer something to help others. But no, it seems like his only concern is his own image. Sure, he says sharing his story will help some people out there, but is it really helping at all if he's not even flashing a few numbers across the screen? I doubt it. And even if he did, it's probably just the producer's idea anyway. To top it all off, Harry saved the best comment for last. He claims that sharing his not necessarily truthful experiences in his book feels like an act of service. Is he really trying to compete with the true royals or just concerned about his own image? It's hard to tell. He may have the syrupy Hollywood language to wrap his vacuousness up in now, but he's always a disaster for anyone else. What's even more infuriating is that Harry contradicts himself constantly. He claims that flash bulbs give him PTSD, yet he grins in the back of the car for the recent staged date-night pap shots. He also claims to be a mental health expert, yet he didn't know where to get help for his suicidal wife. Talk about hypocrisy. These jackasses think that they're doing a service simply by shining a light on whatever trendy cause they're flogging that day. It's nothing more than self-aggrandizing slacktivism, and their justification is that they brought awareness to the issue. But Harry, your oversharing isn't making anyone feel less alone or more seen, no matter how much you whisper to yourself at night. It's no surprise that nobody ever calls him out publicly. Even an NHS doctor refutes all of the dodgy Todgers nonsense in DM today, calling it dangerous. Given what an expert he claims to be, he sure hasn't done anything to deal with his own issues. He's the last person anyone should trust with anything concerning MH. Yet he still feels the need to lecture the rest of us when he's clearly a shambles. And don't even get me started on his lack of action. He hasn't discussed any resources to help with any of the things he's talked about. CBS didn't even put a suicide trigger warning on the Oprah interview or post the hotline number. It's clear that he doesn't care about anyone but himself, and that includes his children. It's no surprise, really. He's ignorant and has no skills except for being a royal spoilt millionaire spare. Him trying to help others by giving advice or sharing wisdom is laughable. I wouldn't call it fraudulent, though, because he really believes he knows more than he does. In fact, after reading his book WOG, it's abundantly clear that his biggest problem is that he's just really dumb. Sure, he can speak fairly well because he was raised to do so, but he needs to be told what to do every step of the way. He needs structure provided for him if he isn't going to just loaf around and be a nuisance to himself and others. The military was as good an environment for him as it gets because everything is so structured, but he has left adrift again after he had to leave it. Then along came Meghan, and we all know how much she loves to give orders and tell others how to live. She's no genius either, but she's got a good 10 to 15 IQ points on Harry, plus she's very driven. Unlike Harry, she's capable of recognizing that she has to take direct action to move the ball down the field toward her goal, and can independently decide which course of action to take. With Harry? Nothing happens, except maybe getting drunk, playing video games, and moping about how everything reminds him of Mummy, despite the fact he claims to have few memories of her, and how unfairly he's treated. So I see Meghan as the driving force behind Harry. She tells him what to do, and since he has no other, better ideas, he does it. He doesn't have a thought in his head. I am pretty sure he's one of those people with no internal monologue, and is empathy deficient, so he just repeats what Meghan's told him he should say. It's clear that Harry suffers from severely arrested development due to the unaddressed trauma of Diana's death, and at least one cluster B personality disorder borderline. But his lack of intelligence and ambition make him a liability, not an asset, to any cause he claims to champion. Meghan only cares about giving the appearance of wanting to help people, and doesn't actually want to do it, so she doesn't bother to tell Harry what advice about therapy and mental health resources he should give, so he just doesn't. In my opinion, Harry may be dumb and a borderliner, but Meghan's the dark triad personified, and of the two, I believe she's far more destructive. It's a shame that the media keeps giving them a platform to spout their nonsense, but I guess controversy sells. He doesn't care whether the peasants have access to mental health services or not. He is narcissistic, rich boy jumping on the topic du jour, which is mental health these days, for clout and so-called prestige. Sooner or later, his audience will get bored of the subject, then he will move on to the next hot topic. Like he did before. Remember how he was giving speeches and opening charities on global warming? What happened to that? I am guessing he will move on to either trans rights or veganism next. Honestly, he is no different than likes of Jamila Jamil, Priyanka, Markle or any other celebrity activist. They are in it for self-promotion, not for making a difference. At risk of sounding like a broken record, I agree with you, and having people think he's actually clever motivated enough to have sustained this years-long hate campaign by himself is falling directly into her machinations. It's been such a shame to see even people who've watched her from the start increasingly focusing on Harry and not recognizing how much more of a terror she is than what's-his-face. Cut him off from her, I guarantee you, he will fade off into a drug-induced haze for the rest of his natural life and never return in earnest to the public eye. It's so easy to deal with someone as thick as Harry, especially for a family as powerful as his. The thing about Harry is that he doesn't inspire any discussion in me. It's so obvious what he is and who he is. He's an absolute jerk and he shows it at literally every moment because he doesn't have the skills or motivation to hide it, and sooner rather than later the entire world will turn against him. Harry is the lowest of low-hanging fruit. It's when you start swinging like crazy at the low-hanging fruit that you miss the poisoned apple at the top of the tree. Meghan would love for us to keep hitting that low-hanging fruit. Meanwhile forgetting about her and the hand she had in virtually all of it. Forgetting that she's likely plotting to gain even more power so that she get away with even more abuse in the future. Even feeling sympathy for her because she has to live with him, allowing her to slowly remake her brand. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more hairy brainless action like this. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.